Hi guys, Hutch here. In this video, I'm going to talk about this whole business of page speed optimization, uh, specifically with regard to Elementor. As you all know, there's been lots of talk about Elementor and how bloated and slow it is, and that you can't get good page speed scores, but you can, and there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm going to talk about one of them, the way I've been doing it for my white label client and also for my own websites. It's not a free way to do it. There is an alternative free way to do it, and I'll do another video about that, or I'll give you a link to a guy who's done a really good video about that. But this is a surefire way to get her done. If you're doing a lot of websites for clients, it's the money well spent, and it's very consistent. Every site I've done this, what I'm going to show you on, has worked, and so I haven't run into any really strange snags. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So we'll dive right in here. There's a couple of assumptions that I'm going to be making with regard to this, and they are as follows. I'm using Flywheel hosting. If you're using a different host, then you may, there's maybe some differences that aren't going to be set up quite the same way, but I'm using Flywheel hosting. I'm using Elementor Page Builder with the Hello theme. Okay. I'm assuming that your Elementor site has been built properly with regard to page layout and best practices. I'm going to do another video about that. That's a whole nother game. But I think one of the biggest problems with Elementor being slow and getting hard to get good page speed scores is the way people are building sites with Elementor. There's a proper way to do it and an improper way to do it. It's unfortunate that they let you do it improperly, but they do. So anyway, I'll make an assumption that you're doing the things that need to be done there. You know how to install and activate plugins. I'm not going to go through installing these plugins and activating them, just it takes up more time. I've already got them installed. I've already got them activated. I'll show you the settings, and that's how we'll do that. So I'm assuming you know how to do that stuff. And also Cloudflare as a CDN. I'm using Cloudflare. Any CDN will work, but Cloudflare has a pretty nice interface with WP Rocket. And so that's one of the plugins we'll be using. And so that's why I use Cloudflare. Plus, it's free. The plugins we're going to be using are, the first one is called Imagify or Imagify, however you want to say that. It's an image optimization and WebP converter, so it'll convert all your existing images to WebP and serve those WebP images. That used to be a little scary thing to do because all the browsers weren't recognizing WebP, and some still don't, but the big three do. Firefox, Google Chrome, and the Microsoft Edge all deal with WebP now, so should be good. So Imagify is not, well, it is. There is a free version of Imagify, and it's but it has a 20 megabyte limit on it. That gets used up pretty quickly, especially if you've got a site with lots of images. And so to avoid bumping into that, I just went ahead and bought this infinite model. I mean, it's $7 a month or $70 a year, and then you don't have to worry about them. And that's for unlimited sites, unlimited per month. So if you're doing a lot of client websites, money well spent. And it does a really nice job. It really saves does a good optimization job. There are other plugins. There's lots of other plugins that do this, but I really, this one works well for me, and I'll show you. It works very well with the other plugin we're going to be using too, WP Rocket. So that's that. Let's see here. Next, I'm going to be using WP Rocket, and that is also a premium plugin, and it's not cheap. Right now they're having a deal. By the time you see this probably won't be happening. Maybe it will, but it's over on December 2nd. But It's a pretty good deal, 174 bucks right now for the Infinite. I paid 250 for it, and that's for a year of updates, unlimited websites. So again, if you're doing lots of client websites like I do, then money well spent. So there's that, and it does a really good job. But yeah, not cheap. So that's that. Another plugin I'll be using is called OMGF, and it's what it does is it locally helps you set up so you can locally serve Google Fonts. This makes a really big difference in page speed. Typically, if you got Google Fonts on your site, which we all do, if you when your page loads, it runs out to Google, gets the fonts, comes back, it takes up time and it slows down your site. So if you can serve those locally, and there's ways to do that manually, you can set that up. But this little plugin, it's free. It does a great job. It's really easy to set this up, and it serves your fonts locally, and really makes a big difference in page speed. So I'll show you that plugin as well and how I set that up. Okay. Of course, we're using Elementor and Elementor Pro on here as well, and so that's the stack. That's the tech stack for this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into this, and let me pull up my first thing I'll show you is the Flywheel has a setting that needs to be set. If you're hosting on a Flywheel, this is pertinent. And so let me pull up this monitor. So in Flywheel, in the advanced tab on your site, there's an option down here at the bottom called WP Cache. This is by default turned off, and because Flywheel does their own server-side caching, and they do a really good job of it. But if you're using WP Rocket, Flywheel recommends you turn this off, because what this does, it turns off Flywheel's caching, lets you do that stuff through WP Rocket, and avoids conflicts. And so Flywheel's pretty picky about plugins that you use, because they do a lot of server-side stuff. So that's one thing that has to be turned on. So I'll turn that on, and I'll always, just after I turn it down, I'll flush the cache one time, and then go about my business of setting up WP Rocket and all of that stuff. Okay, so we'll talk about Cloudflare in a minute here, because it's part of the setup in WP Rocket. But let me just get into this. So first one I want to look at is we'll go ahead and look at Imagify first of all. So Imagify, when you install it and load it up, it'll ask you for your license key or API key or whatever it is. Then this screen will come up, and these two options are automatically checked, and you want to leave them checked. This auto optimize images on upload. So if you've got a client that's uploading 4,000 pixel images, which we all have those clients, this automatically takes care of that, and does a backup of original images. This is default unticked, and I'd leave it that way. There's some extra data attached to images. You can keep that if you want, but it's just extra stuff you don't need really. So, but if you do need it for whatever reason, you can tick this box and it'll keep it. Under optimization, when it comes, this is unticked. You want to tick that to create WebP versions of images. So that'll create a WebP version of all of your existing images that are already uploaded into your website. And then and if you tick this box, display images on WebP format, so it will actually not only convert them but display them, and it's all set up. Use this picture tag. That's the preferred way to do it, and that seems to work very well. So I just leave that set that way. As far as the resizing of larger images, we talked about that auto optimize up here. This kind of defines that. So this is your maximum size. What I typically do is I look down here, whatever this says down here, because this tells you what the largest image you have at this point is, and so I'll set it at that. But you can set this at anything you want, and then it will, any image that gets uploaded bigger than that, it will shrink it down to that size. These are all ticked by default. Leave them ticked. Over here, when you first load it, there's a message here that talks about theme. Do you want to include your theme? I always tick yes, and then it will include your theme in the optimization. And so I can see here, you can see here I've got my hello and my child master theme for the hello theme is included. One other very important thing to do is to click this Add Folders button. Go into WP Content, go into Uploads, and go into Elementor. Now, I don't have them on this site, but you'll often see a other folder here that says Thumbs, and you want to, when you see that, you want to hover over it and tick this little box to add that folder as well, and that'll optimize all your thumbnail images that are uploaded. Okay, and then click Select Folders, and that will add that to this list of things to be optimized. Okay. So there's that. This little thing here just tells me if I want him to display this up here, and I just leave that ticked. I think it's by default. So then we want to save our changes and go to Bulk Optimizer, and I've already run that on this site, so I'm already 100% optimized. But you'll come in here, you'll tick these two boxes, you'll click Imagify them all. It'll do its thing, and when it gets all done, it'll let you know that everything's been optimized. Just a note, if you're on this page and it's running, if you leave this page, it'll stop running. And so you got to come back and start it again. So if I'm going to be doing other work on the site, I'll typically start this running, then open another tab and do the other work and let this thing run in the background till it gets all the images done. After that, you don't have to worry about it so much. Okay, and so that takes care of that. So that optimizes all your images. You can see here on this little site, it's not a very big site. It's not too many pages, but I had 19 megabytes of images, and it got me down to 6.4. So that's a pretty big difference. Okay. All right, so that's Imagify. WP Rocket is next. When you load WP Rocket, you purchase it and load it and get your keys put in and all that stuff, your license key. Then you'll come to this setup page, and the dashboard, really there's not much to do. There's buttons here to clear the cache, purge the OP cache, clear use CSS, just kind of clears everything out. I go there once in a while, but you can actually hover up here and do all that clearing up here too, so that's typically where I do it. Anyway, for the caching, I don't tick anything in here. The only thing I change here is you can enable caching for mobile devices, and you can actually, that doesn't hurt anything. I'll probably just go ahead and leave that. You can also set up a separate cache file for mobile devices. Whoops, it says most modern themes are responsive and should work without a separate cache. Enable this if you have a dedicated mobile theme or plugin. So if you're, in the old days, you had to make a separate thing for mobile, but anyway, I will often enable caching for mobile devices. It helps a little bit on your mobile score. I don't use anything else. I think this comes default set at hours or something like that. I switch it to days. This is the time after the global cache is cleared, so you can set that whatever you want, but 10 hours is good. Okay, always hit save changes when you make any changes in here. Otherwise, it's real easy to go to the next section, not hit save, and of course then they don't get saved, and it's like it was before. File optimization. You can minify CSS files. You can combine. This option here does help, but it can break things. So, like I know in Elementor, if you've got a sub menu. So if you've got on your main navigation, you've got a little caret point down, you're using any kind of icon on your sub to point that there's a sub menu underneath that when you hover. This will break that so it doesn't display, I've noticed. I don't know what the deal is, some kind of CSS conflict. So if I have those little caret icons on my nav, I'll turn this off. But otherwise I turn it on. It seems to help quite a bit. You can minify. I have some. It does create some problems with Elementor for some reason, so I don't turn those on. You can play with it and see what it does for you, but that's I leave those off. I do tick load JavaScript deferred, and I even do this delay JavaScript execution. This one's a little can be a little problematic if you've got a lot going on your home page, a lot of JavaScript stuff. If not, it's fine. And so I typically tick those two boxes and I leave them, and it's usually good. Media library, lazy loading. I hear lots of people say you should turn it on. I have nothing but trouble with lazy loading. It seems to slow things down and mess things up Maybe it's just Elementor. I do not enable lazy load for anything. I do add missing image dimensions. This will add your missing dimensions for you if you don't do that. That's a thing. So you can tick that box and it'll take care of that for you. Adds it into code. If you do enable lazy load, you can exclude. So if you want to enable lazy load and exclude the images on, for example, your home page, you can list those all out here. But I just don't mess with it. I don't turn it on. I seem to have better luck that way. I always hit that save even when I don't save, just because. Preload. So this can be very helpful, but if you're hosting on Flywheel, they highly recommend you turn this off. It does cause problems with their hosting. So if you're on Flywheel, like we are in this particular situation, we turn off preloading. All preloading is turned off. So none of that. Advanced rules, nothing here to do. There are options here where you can specify URLs you never want to cache, cookies you never want to cache, user agents, always purge URLs, cache query string, all that stuff. You can put those in here and just kind of list them out and it'll take care of those things. I don't use this, so that's that. Database, this keeps your database cleaned up. I tick every box in this page here. This gets rid of revisions. You can see I've got some stacked up because I've been here working on this site, but it gets rid of all the revisions, auto drafts, trash posts, spam comments, trash comments, all your transients, optimized tables. And you can schedule this to run whatever you want. I've got it set weekly right now. You can set it up daily, weekly, or monthly to go in and clean out your deal. You can set it to daily if you want to. But it'll go in and clean all those transients out. So if you're not working in a site a lot, daily is a little, too much probably. But you can save those changes and optimize, and it will keep your database nice and clean and have not a bunch of junk laying in there. CDN, so WP Rocket has its own CDN. I do not recommend it. It's not that good. Plus it costs $8 a month, and Cloudflare is free. So I use Cloudflare instead. So I don't do anything in this section here. This is just for WP Rocket CDN, which I do not recommend. The heartbeat section, this comes, I believe it comes set at reduced activity. I turn it off. I disable all this stuff, just stuff running in the background you don't really need to have running. Add-ons. Okay, this is where we get into Cloudflare. So a couple things. You can do varnish. You can do, if you don't use Imagify and do the WebP thing we did in there, WP Rocket does have its own WebP thing. I find it doesn't really work quite as well, so I don't use it. I use Imagify instead. Cloudflare, you turn it on. It comes default turned off. You turn it on if you're using Cloudflare. Go to modify options. You'll get your global API key, your zone ID from Cloudflare, your account email, and put those three things in. Turn this on, it's off, and that'll set up some optimal stuff in Cloudflare when you save it. And this tells you how to find your API key. It's in Cloudflare. It's pretty simple. You just go into your profile here and click API tokens, and then if you click view, it steps you through a bunch of stuff you have to do to actually see it, and then you can copy that and paste it into WP Rocket. And so those get put in there. Set this to optimal settings and save your changes. And then I always hammer this one time just to clear all the Cloudflare cache files. Okay, so that's another caching clear place there. Tools, there's one little handy thing here. Once you get all your settings and they're working the way you want them, you can actually download those settings. It'll download a file for you, and you can save that on your computer. So then when you set WP Rocket up next time, all you have to do is choose that file, upload it, and it'll put all those settings in. Slick. So it works really well. I use that all the time. You can use rollback if you have a problem with the upgrade. I've never had to use it, never had a problem. And then the last thing in here is just some tutorial stuff. Great little videos on how to do things. They've got tons of documentation. So just about anything you want to know about page speed optimization, you can find it in their documentation. Really good documentation with this plugin. Okay, so that's WP Rocket. Next on the plugin agenda is this last little plugin here called OMGF. So you install this plugin, you activate it, and when you first activate it, you will not see this. You'll come down here and save and optimize, and it will go out and look and grab all of the fonts that your site is currently using. So it'll automatically go out and grab. So I've got Wrapup and Montserrat fonts here. And so it'll grab all those fonts, and then you can go in and say, okay, I only want to load or locally host these. Okay, so on this side, I turn off the 100, 300. I only use 400, 7, and 9. So I tick those to preload. I tick the other ones to turn them off. Same with Wrapup Slab. Same with Montserrat. I don't load all these 100, 200, 300. I load 400. I load 700. I loaded 900 because that's what I'm using on this site. So once you get those all ticked, then you can save and optimize, and that will actually avoid going out to Google and getting those fonts and coming back. So there's some other settings here. You don't really need to mess with any of that stuff. Just do this, and it will really make a difference on your page speed scores in terms of fonts, preloading fonts. I'll show you that. Okay, so that's that little plugin. That's a free plugin. That one doesn't cost anything, so that's a nice deal. Let me see what else I need to talk to you about here before I. Okay, so we've talked about hosting. We've got the plugins, Flywheel Settings, Cloudflare. The plugins, I'll set those up. Okay, so one other thing, in Elementor, most of you that use Elementor know this, they have these experiments over here. This is what I turn on, is these three. This one does cause some problems sometimes. You can play with these. Sometimes turning these off helps. It just depends on the site, it seems like, but these are the three. I always turn this one on, but turning these two on helps also. So those three, I make sure that I activate those. And of course, if you know, in Elementor, if you're in here doing a bunch of work and you're doing a bunch of updates and whatnot, it's always a good idea to come in here and regenerate the files and data and sync your libraries. That helps to clean things up a bit. Okay, so that's that. So on this site, with those settings that I just showed you, these are the scores I got. I ran this a while ago. I'll go ahead and rerun this just to show you. You know, you guys know how these page speed things are. They fluctuate. You can run this 5 times in a row and get 5 radically different scores usually. But I find with this setup, that doesn't happen much with GT Metrix. It's once I get it set and dialed in, pretty well stays within a couple of points. I've been hitting 100 on this thing every time I run it. What's important to note here is this time to first byte is pretty quick, and fully loaded site in less than half a second. So it works. All greens down here. Another interesting thing to look at is this waterfall. If you don't load that little plugin I showed you on the font thing, so this is Font Awesome, and I think there's a way to deal with those too, but you see they're taking some considerable time. So I could even improve this score even more if I deal with that. But typically you'll see if you don't have that OMGF plugin or whatever it's called, you'll see some pretty long times here while it goes out and grabs Google Fonts, but that little plugin eliminates those, so it does help quite a bit. So yeah, that's the GT Metrix score. PageSpeed Insights, you know how it is. Like, here's the desktop. Mobile, I tell you, an hour ago this was setting at 90. I usually have 90, and now it's down to 63 for some reason. I probably messed something up while I was doing this, but anyway, you can fiddle around with mobile, and you can, when you look at this, when you run this mobile thing and it shows not a very good score, you can go down there and see what the problem is. Oftentimes it's Oh, there's my 90. Okay, it's back now. So that's my mobile scores I'm getting on this thing right now. And if you're not getting 90, if you're not in the green there, you can come down here. It'll actually tell you exactly what the problem is. I've got a couple of things I can do here. This server time, response time, like that's kind of out of your hands. That's your hosting company. And so I'm not sure there's a lot. You can call your host and have them work on that. But anyway, so that's the page speed scores I'm getting. 90, 94, and 100s on GT Metrix. So that's it, guys. That's one way of getting a good page speed score on Elementor. There is a way to do this without buying plugins. It takes a little bit more effort, but there's a guy, I've got him up here. He's called Web Squadron, and he's on a YouTube. You just search Web Squadron on YouTube, you'll find him. He's got this video called Elementor Zero Bloat and Get High Speed Insights, and he tells you how to get these kind of scores that I just showed you without using purchased plugins. I haven't tried all this, but it looks pretty skooking to me. I am gonna try it, and I will make another video about how to do this without buying premium plugins. But if you're doing lots of client websites, spending money on those couple premium plugins I showed you, well worth the money. It just makes things a whole lot easier and works very consistently. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm gonna get on out of here. I hope this video was helpful to somebody out there, and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you in the next video.